It's Monday, August 19th, 2019. Digital Trends Live is about to start. Here are some of the topics we'll be covering. Gamescom is essentially the E3 of Europe, and the giant gaming conference is kicking off August 20th to 24th in Cologne, Germany. But we've got coverage of some of the pre-announcements today. And Apple may not have a huge presence there, but we do have some of the first purported images of Apple Arcade, as their own employees are now paying for the beta of the streaming gaming platform. We have some great guests today, including Nat Bius of Uber. Nat is the head of AV safety in the Uber Advanced Technologies Group, and we'll discuss the future of autonomous vehicle safety. And a group of researchers led by Harvard has showcased a robotic assistant to help in alleviating some of the pressure and the metabolic costs associated with walking and running, improving mobility. All that and so much more on today's Digital Trends Live. It is looking very Portlandy out there today.
We're not in Georgia anymore.
We are not in Georgia anymore, Luke. It is safe to go outside. But although it's kind of chilly. It's not really not the greatest. But nonetheless, it still looks great. And so do all of you. Thanks for tuning in. This is Digital Trends Live. This is our daily show here from Digital Trends, bringing you the trending tech topics of the day, news, interviews, headlines, and discussions, all while broadcasting live across a number of different platforms. We're on Periscope, LinkedIn Live, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. We're on Dailymotion, Apple News, 2 different mobile apps. We're on a smart TV app, and we're at digitaltrends.com/live. Thank you for finding us, so make sure to drop in your comments, your questions as we go throughout the show. It's Monday. Let's start it off. I'm Greg Nibbler, joined by Luke Larson. Hello, Luke.
Monday.
I have to say one thing I just want to point out right now. People may be shocked. If you're watching this, Luke does not have his traditional mug.
Yeah, I'm getting a little lazy.
Really?
I gotta
Okay.
pick up my,
so it's just straight up laziness. Yeah. Well, I didn't want everybody thrown off too much, so we just had to make sure we addressed that.
It is actually me.
Yeah, it is actually Luke Larson,
yeah.
So we want to make sure that everybody's not just thrown off too much. But let's get to some news, shall we? There is a lot that is happening in the world of technology, and right now in Cologne, Germany, Gamescom is beginning. So Gamescom is essentially the E3 of Europe. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Is that about the right description for it? So it's a really huge gaming conference. You don't see a lot of AAA games at this, but you do see big announcements from a lot of the companies involved in gaming. And now I'm talking about Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony possibly, Google Stadia. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are over there, and we're already getting some of the pre-conference announcements coming out right now. So technically it starts tomorrow on August 20th, but right now we've already heard from Nintendo and some of the games that are going to be coming to the Switch, which are a lot of games that are going to show up on this.
Yeah, some indie games. Which I like. I like to see. I mean, a lot of these are. It was fun going through the list because I was like, oh man, I've actually played these games.
Yeah.
Some of them are from back in my heyday of gaming.
Yeah, back in Luke's heyday of gaming. Well, one of them being Super Hot, which is kind of a classic, popular game that's going to be part of this. So that's one that's going to be rolling out to the Switch. I know a lot of people are excited about that. If you are, let us know in the comments how you feel about some of these Nintendo announcements that have come out. And again, Nintendo already had their pre-game conference. The other ones are going to be throughout the day. We have all the coverage at Digital Trends. But yeah, Super Hot coming out on the Nintendo Switch. So that's a big one. And I believe it's out now. If you have a Switch, you can get that right now already. So that's cool. You have the Hotline Miami, which I admit I have not played Hotline Miami.
It's actually a really cool game.
Is it?
Yeah. It's like a really kind of like gruesome top-down shooter. It's really, kind of retro or whatever. But yeah, really fun game. If you haven't played that one, and I think there's a sequel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole collection.
I've only played the original one, but it's a really good one. And what makes me excited about these is because the Switch has become such a popular thing.
Yeah.
It's just I hope these games get kind of like a second life, and just a bunch of people play them that maybe they never did originally because people just love playing games on their Switch,
Right.
Just because it's fun.
Yeah,
and
just
you
to give
can
them
take it anywhere with you, and it's just
Yeah, the Switch is a lot of fun. Do you own a Switch?
I do not own a Switch, but I've heard a lot of people around the office just say if they can choose a platform to play a game on, it'll always be Switch. So
really, just because of that mobility factor?
Mobility, yeah, and I think that's the primary thing, and just the comfort of it,
Yeah.
So.
Well, and they just came out, with that newer version of the Switch with a longer battery life. So I think that's got a lot of people really excited. Then we'll get the Nintendo Switch Mini and maybe some other hardware later on this year. There's all kinds of rumors of different, maybe like a super Switch or something like that, Switch Pro, or
Yeah.
I don't know what they would call it, Switch X, but maybe a bigger one too. But these are some of the games that are rolling out. So there were 30 different Switch games that came out. There's trailers for all of them. We've got all that at Digital Trends, and that's just Nintendo's announcement. Because also you have announcements coming from Xbox with their Inside Xbox conference, and then Google Stadia for Stadia Connect.
Right.
So we're going to find out some more from each of them too. Xbox. I don't know exactly what they're going to announce. Obviously, it's hard to say.
Yeah,
until we see it.
kind of happening almost as we speak, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
it
like
is.
right now, so we'll have to.
Which is why it's best to check that out at about 10:30 once
Yeah.
we have everything wrapped up, and we'll have all the information for you. 10:30 a.m. Pacific. That's the best time to do it. So yeah, Xbox is having theirs right now, and then celebrating, X019 celebration is what they're calling it, and then Google Stadia. So that one I'm really interested to know what
Yeah.
they come out with for this.
Yeah, and it seems like the emphasis of all this is definitely on games, just because E3
Yeah.
is very hardware focused, because all the new consoles and Google's trying to launch this whole new, platform or whatever.
Yeah.
So it seems like the emphasis here is games. I think I saw something that the Xbox one would be mostly games, and same with the Stadia one.
Stadia, the games. Even that for Stadia, though, that would be great just to know some of that. And
Yeah.
do they have some exclusive games that are
Yeah.
going to be really amazing that are coming out? Will they demonstrate it actually in action?
Right. Or will they? I think more importantly, will they have some games that are games that everybody already plays?
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Hey, you can play it here now.
Yeah, and like I could ditch my whatever and just like, oh, this streaming thing, it's great, or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
stuff like that I think is pretty important.
So we'll find out more about that as we go through the day. But there was some hardware announced. I know.
Yeah, there actually was.
Yeah.
Not on the console side of things, but as you say, Gamescom is a gaming event as a whole. So we got some PC gaming stuff, which is in my world.
Yep.
A little more, and actually we got this really cool story behind Alienware's new. Kind of like they've kind of redesigned their entire portfolio of gaming products, laptops, desktops. The one that got announced at Gamescom was the Aurora R9, which is a new kind of mid-size gaming desktop. Normally wouldn't be a huge deal, but if you take a look at the story, we got kind of the behind the scenes on where the influences came from, because this is like unlike any gaming desktop that you would see. It's got white, and it's got a really interesting. Those are some of the like naked shots of it before it's kind of as it was being built. Those are some of the prototypes you're seeing there on the screen that they built. But as you can see, even just from those, it's like, whoa, that is not a typical gaming gaming desktop, or even just gaming vibe. It's something kind of really fresh and new, which
is great.
Yeah,
I mean, you want to see something new, something different.
And gaming products really just need this right now.
Yeah.
It's like it's starting to get kind of tired of the black boxy, some RGB on there. And that's basically what gaming products look like, and it kind of bothers me that that's what they are, and they can't be,
Right. We can't do anything different.
We can't venture outside of that,
Yeah.
And these are like, whoa, this is like something really fresh and new, especially from Alienware, which like they're all about these like kind of weird designs, and like, they're kind of iconic in that sense. So like they need to kind of step forward and do something new, and hopefully like other manufacturers will follow suit.
I mean, I think anytime you have something different is great.
Yeah.
It's good for the industry. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it takes off or not. But I think it's really cool when companies take risks on something. I'm sure this wasn't a huge risk for Alienware. They probably had an idea of where they were going, but just changing it up.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the quotes from the story is one of the lead designers there was just like, not everybody's gonna like this.
Yeah.
Some people are gonna love it, and that's what I like about it. It's just like. And I like that kind of boldness. It's like, you know what, we're going to try something.
Yeah.
We really love it, and we know some people will love it, but we also know not everybody will, and that's just okay,
Yeah, you don't have to buy it. No one's forcing you to buy it. So.
Yeah, and it's not going to be, nothing is for everyone anyway, so you should just make something that's really cool, and some people will love it, I'm sure. So.
Well, let us know what you think about that. So we do have that exclusive at digitaltrends.com right now that you can go take a look at. And like I said, there's going to be announcements all day long. We'll be keeping everybody up to date at digitaltrends.com and across our social media. There is one thing with Sony that that I do think there's a rumor that we might get to see Last of Us Part 2, maybe.
Oh, that'd be
maybe something
good.
from that. That's a rumor. Nothing confirmed on that. But if
Yeah.
that did happen, that would be really cool. That is a
Yeah.
game I would be really excited to see.
Yeah, definitely.
So who knows? There's lots of this. It's going to be happening for a few days. So I'm sure we'll get a lot of the announcements here in the first 24 hours or so. But a
That's
lot
typically
of stuff.
how these things
Yeah,
work.
they
You
just
get
kind of roll it
everything.
all out. Yeah, here it all is.
Before it even starts, you have all the
Yeah, yep. But you can follow along Digital Trends. We'll keep you up to date on all of that. All right. It is now time for some Read 'em and Weep, something we do here every day at Digital Trends Live, where we take a look at some of the comments that have come through across our many different platforms and we address them directly to you. You wrote them to us. Now we'll have our say. Or we'll cry. I don't know. It's in the title.
We do get the final word.
We do,
They
yeah,
don't-
that's
They don't
true.
get a talk back.
Although then they can just comment afterwards. So, all right, Devin Young. That's Devin Young. We're going to take a look at Devin's comment here in just a moment. And again, Read 'em and Weep. We're live, so we can always take your comments and read them as we're live. But these are ones that are
and
left in.
actually weep live.
And we could weep live. I mean, this is something we're not afraid to do that on this show.
I usually take it until after the show. I usually weep outside.
It's
but,
true.
yeah.
Luke cries every time after the show, just for everybody to know. Devin, regarding tired of choosing between Windows and Mac, check out these Chromebooks. Tired of picking between home-cooked meals and nice sit-down restaurants when I get some cheap and unhealthy fast food. Wow.
You know what, Devin? There are some times.
I like that. That was good. That was a solid one.
There are some times when that's what you need. You know, it's 11 o'clock. It's midnight. You're coming
Yeah.
home. You know.
Yeah.
You need something quick
Taco
and
Bell's
fast.
right
Sometimes
there.
Taco Bell is the only thing that will
Yeah.
satisfy.
Well, Devin, I mean, yeah, I can see what you're talking about. Was this one of yours?
Yeah.
Your article?
yeah.
Okay, this was one of your articles.
Yeah. I get what he's saying. I don't know exactly where the metaphor is playing. I don't know if he thinks Mac is the home-cooked meal and the Windows is a nice sit-down restaurant. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
hard
a
to
funny,
tell.
funny metaphor. But no, I think Chromebooks are fill a certain need, and there's some people who it's perfect for, honestly.
Yeah,
So,
especially late night,
yeah,
like
some
11:30
people
p.m.
eat McDonald's for every meal, and you know what?
Maybe.
So be it.
Maybe you just got to swing by, grab a Chromebook sometime. And then you don't tell anybody about it. Though.
Supersized Chromebook.
All right, Devin, thank you. That is great. That was on Facebook, a comment regarding that article. Again, we read the comments here at Digital Trends, and you do get our comments back. Jamie Jones regarding 5G. How 5G will affect your smartphone and your life in 2019. Vodafone and EE is already advertising the blank out of 5G, but how about checking its safety first? We're getting cooked like we was in a microwave. Teach your children now before we get the billionaire robots taking over. There is so much in this,
There's
and
a
I
lot
love
there.
every part of it. All right, Jamie, not sure where they're advertising the crap out of it. I don't remember Vodafone advertising for that, but okay.
Maybe.
It's probably in Europe. I'm assuming this, I'm going to guess Jamie's from the UK.
Okay.
How about checking its safety first? We're getting cooked like we was in a microwave.
Not very polite for a European.
No, not at all. Also, the grammar's a little bit off, but still, we're getting cooked like we was in a microwave. Now, the thing is, if you said, how about we check its safety first, but then you're also saying we're getting cooked like in a microwave, are you saying there's already been studies done that say we're getting cooked like a microwave, or are there no studies and you're just
I think he's
going out
implying
your own
that
hypothesis?
he's checked the safety. First.
He's checked it. All right,
And we're
Jamie.
getting cooked like a microwave.
Jamie has checked it. Teach your children now before we get the billionaire robots taking
I'm
over.
really curious about these billionaire
I
robots.
want to know about them too.
I didn't know robots were after material wealth. I didn't know that was a thing that they were.
No. I mean, you always see people talking about the Illuminati or the New World Order. Now I'm just realizing it's a bunch of robots sitting in like a boardroom like, this is excellent. We will use our billions to take over. That's how I'm picturing that. Jamie, I think you just created a movie right there.
I think
with
so.
That. Yeah, the
A
billionaire
horrible
robots. The secret billionaire robots. Jamie, thank you for being you. Thank you for commenting on our YouTube channel. We appreciate that. All right, Ron Turner, regarding this water blasting shotgun could take out a fire in seconds. Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side.
This is a comment I can get behind.
Yes. Luke, have you seen this water blasting shotgun?
I don't know if I have actually.
See, I was picturing it more, if you're in a squirt gun fight or something, bring.
Does that mean it kind of like it's like a spread?
I think so. This is how I'm imagining it. I haven't seen it either.
It's just a splash of water, like.
Yeah, a good spread on it, and you can really take out a lot of
Okay.
Take out a lot at one time. Ron, I mean, I like this. This is a solid comment that you have right there.
A well-placed Star Wars quote is always going to get a good thumbs up from
response.
me. Yeah.
That is perfect. I'm seeing some more comments coming through in the live chat now. George referencing back to the billionaire robots, is seeing a robot Scrooge McDuck with David Tennant's voice. So we're already
Very
casting.
specific.
Already casting for that. So diving in a pile of chips. Okay. Too far down. David, regarding this machine, makes it easy to climb up trees. Clearly, the man is barking up the wrong tree. Just wait until he meets a tree with branches. Okay, I have not seen this one either, but I will say that I am all for the robots doing the tree trimming. I'm just fine with that.
Okay, yeah, I am too.
Yeah.
So he's casting some doubt on that.
Yeah, he's saying that the robot's not going to be able to do it. But I think the robot will do. This is something where I want robots. I want billionaire robots to be trimming my trees.
You want billionaire? I don't think the billionaires are going to be
They're not going to be doing
the hard work.
They probably won't be doing that. All right. Well, David,
I like the pun though.
it's
Barking up the wrong
solid.
tree.
It's solid. We appreciate that. That's on Twitter. So, David, we do appreciate you joining in here for Digital Trends Live for Read 'em and Weep that we do here every day. All right. Let me see if we've got one more. Okay, we've got one more here that we're going to do. David Hulme, regarding the Bugatti 110 is only possible because of the latest design tech. Just what me and the missus need to go to Walmart and fetch groceries. Pulling up in a Bugatti at the Walmart, yeah, that's a bold move.
What are these? What is the latest design tech? I wonder.
I'm not sure.
Must help you get groceries. I'm assuming.
I'm going to guess so, but I know where I can go to find out. It's digitaltrends.com. That's where I can find. That's where you can find out about all of those. Well, all right. Thank you, everybody, for joining in for Read 'em and Weep. We've got some more news, though, we need to get to. So let's do this. The first up has to do with Huawei. The ongoing thing involving Huawei, and there's much bigger implications associated with Huawei and then China and all of that. But I want to briefly cover one thing that does or could affect all of us when it comes to technology, and it is kind of referencing the 5G side of things. So the U.S. government has extended the Huawei reprieve for 90 days. And what that means is companies that are utilizing Huawei technology that have not been approved are now given an extra 90 days before they have to switch this all out.
So
Does this make
companies
sense?
who are working with Huawei directly now
Yes.
have an extra 90 days.
Yes, an extra 90 days to work with them, and it's going to allow Huawei to keep sending updates to phones and maintaining existing networks and equipment. So that's one of the big things here, that existing networks and equipment, because a lot of smaller rural internet providers use their equipment.
Oh,
Because it's easy,
okay.
it's cheaper, and it
Yeah.
works well.
Yeah.
So that's part of the issue. Like, if this were to continue on, this ban with Huawei, that would mean that everybody would have to start changing out their equipment, which is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
Very expensive.
And I like how just like in the logic of what they're saying, they're admitting that this has an impact on actual like rural
Yep.
companies and rural people, and it's just like
100%.
like everyone's trying to pretend like it doesn't matter. It's
Yeah,
like, oh,
it
this is
doesn't
good
affect
for
me,
us.
yeah.
You know, and it's just like it's right there.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, they make some of this hardware. I mean,
Yeah.
they're the ones who manufacture a lot of the hardware that's being used, and there's not necessarily a really quick way to replace all of that without a huge expense.
And I'm assuming those companies chose Huawei for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Like they were cheap or they were,
Yep.
good at what they do, And so
I think
like,
probably a combination of both.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that there's not plenty to be concerned with Huawei. That's not the implication there.
Sure.
I get that. But this is going to have an impact. It's
Is
not
this the
something
way? Yeah.
that you can just ignore, because if companies do eventually have to start changing this out, you better believe that cost is getting passed down to all of us.
Yeah, for sure.
That's where that's getting passed down to. So it's one more thing to just kind of pay attention to, follow. It's a very complicated issue, but this is one more step of, well, we'll give you another 90 days. Well, and it kind of keeps happening like that. So I hope there's just some stability coming soon in as far as what the plan is.
Yeah, and the networking is a good point because like I think people are like, oh well, I don't have a Huawei phone because they're not really that big in the US yet, and I don't have a Huawei laptop because those also aren't really that big here. But it's like, no, there's like the networking stuff is the stuff that actually really matters, So,
Yeah, that you're utilizing their technology, you just don't realize it.
Exactly.
In a lot of places. So that's something to pay attention to. And we've got coverage of that at Digital Trends. Just want to bring that up because it is a trending story right now. We'll go more in depth on the site as far as what all these implications are and what the ramifications are of that. But I just want to make you aware that's what's happening. So it was extended for another 90 days as they try to figure out what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think is really what it comes down
Hopefully
to.
they figure it out.
Hopefully they figure it out. For all of us,
Yeah.
let's hope they figure it out. But that's one trending story. Let's continue on with another one. We do have another gaming topic here to cover, but it's not one coming from Gamescom. This is coming from Apple. And it's news that's being released that Apple Arcade, which is their forthcoming gaming service, is now being tested out by employees. So the employees now have access to it. And a couple of interesting things with it. So one, this is a report that comes from 9 to 5 Mac. So Apple Arcade Early Access Program. This is what the employees are getting. They are being charged for it, which I thought that was interesting. 49 cents per month is what Apple employees pay after a 1 month free trial for their internal testing. That just seems strange. That's a weird way to go about it.
On a lot
like you get a month, and then a month free trial involved too.
Maybe they're trying to be like, okay, we want to replicate. We want to see if people are actually willing to pay for this, even our own.
Even if it's
employees.
50 cents.
But 50 cents is like, I don't know if that's going to be a very accurate testing because that's not what everybody else is going to be paying.
Yeah.
So.
For sure, it's going to be a lot more. But so they're running it right now. So the testing program, they said, will end with the release of iOS 13, which we're expecting that probably mid-September when the new phones come out.
Yeah.
But this is like giving it a go here before it goes live for the public.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You should do that with your software and your...
It makes sense, have your employees test it out.
For sure.
It's strange, although, certainly I don't know the inner workings of Apple or why they would put the charge in there. Maybe it's to test out the payment system, although I would think they'd have that worked out pretty well. I'm not sure. But a couple of takeaways from it, though, from what we were able to gather, is that it looks like you would get unlimited access to a whole bunch of games for the monthly fee. And one key thing is that it looks like after you download the game, you'd be able to play it offline. That's also cool. That's a cool feature.
And on any iOS device.
And on any iOS device. So you'd be able to play it afterward. And I want to know what people think about this video game subscription model, because Google Stadia is trying to go for this too. Apple apparently is, that's how they're going to be doing it. And you'll have to see if some other services go along. It's not like you don't have the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live and all that.
Right, and those are the most successful subscription bundle types of things.
But this one kind of going across all these platforms.
Yeah, and we don't have a price yet, right?
We don't. No, we don't have a price for either of them.
It's not going to be 50 cents.
No, it won't be 50 cents. Yeah, pretty confident on that.
It's interesting. Like, there's all these exciting announcements from E3 last year, or E3 and Gamescom right now, and Apple's thing that they announced at this point back at WWDC is just like lost a lot of steam. I feel like it was kind of interesting when they first announced it because Apple's finally kind of doing something for games. And then now there's just like, oh, Google's doing this insane game streaming. They're so ambitious, and this is just like dipping their toe in. Like, we're gonna put all the games that we already have just like in a bundle for you.
Yeah, it's the same thing that they're doing too with even Apple TV Plus. It's kind of like that too.
Yeah.
Even though there's $1 billion invested in Apple TV Plus, there's $500 million invested in Apple Arcade. For Apple though, that's
sure, that's not
nothing.
Yeah, and when you look at what else is out there, it's like there's just some more interesting things than Apple TV and Apple Arcade out there. I don't know. We'll see. But one interesting thing is that it does work on the Mac App Store. So
maybe this will be on the Mac as well then.
I think it says 95 Mac was able to gain access to Apple Arcade on the Mac App Store. So.
Well,
that's cool.
That's cool, but we've got that at Digital Trends. The last quick thing, I know we're almost out of time, is as usual with the news, there's so much to cover. I want to just draw attention to a feature we have up at Digital Trends right now about the search for Amelia Earhart's plane. So the search is still on for that. And this is, in particular, though, there's a technology side to this. So the person who actually discovered the Titanic, who found the Titanic, at the bottom of the ocean, he is also now leading the charge to look for Amelia Earhart's plane. And they're utilizing this robotics system called BEN, B-E-N, which it stands for Bathymetric Explorer and Navigator. So this is the name of this thing. But it's a very high-tech piece of equipment that can actually do some scans that we can't.
Yeah.
That you'd either have to have, it's either too shallow for some of our fancy equipment that we have, or it's too deep.
It's like in between.
It's in between.
Yeah.
And it's doing this mapping of the ocean bottom that's just really incredible.
Yeah, it's a really cool story. I would really recommend checking it. I was just reading it this morning, and there's a lot of cool stuff there, and like our writer there just was able to pull out this thing about this robot that they use that nobody talks about the equipment that these people use for these like crazy missions to like find stuff at the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
It's just like, of course they're using some crazy like robot to do that.
Yeah, and you can just see where that technology could be used in other areas, because a lot of times when you have cutting edge stuff like this, eventually there's whatever's coming out of it, we're going to see it utilized in different areas other than just Amelia Earhart's plane. There's a lot outside of that too that goes with it.
The real question is the guy that's doing this, was he in the movie Titanic?
I don't know. Maybe he got a cameo.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it was in the lower decks when he was probably doing one of the Irish jigs. I think that's what it was. All right. Let's do this. We're going to take a break. We have lots of coverage coming up here on Digital Trends, but Luke, thank you very much for joining us here at the top of the show. Coming up in just a little bit, we have Davin Matthews is going to come in talking about the differences between how good cell phone cameras are getting versus the actual DSLR camera. Where's the battle?
I bet he has a strong opinion.
I'm going to guess he has some opinions on that. But coming up next, though, really excited to talk about this. We're going to be talking about autonomous vehicles. We've got Nat Bius, head of AV safety for Uber's Advanced Technologies Group. So cool. We're going to talk about how autonomous vehicles are coming along, what they're doing, and in particular, how we're going to keep them safe. How do we stay safe with autonomous vehicles? And we're going to talk about that and so much more. Drop in your comments, your questions on whatever platform you're watching. We'll be back in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thank you all for joining us wherever you find us. We do appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button to get the notifications when we do go live. And one of the things we really like talking about here are the future of autonomous vehicles. We cover it in a lot of different facets. It's definitely something that's going to be happening. There's a lot of companies working on it right now, but in particular, there's a lot of concerns as well. You want to make sure that everything is safe. And we're going to be discussing that and a whole lot more involved with this because we have certainly an expert who's joining us right now. We have Nat Bius, who is the head of AV safety for the Uber Advanced Technologies Group. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be able to share some what knowledge of what we're doing and actually what's also going on in the rest of the industry.
Perfect. Yeah, because that's one of the things we think about with autonomous vehicles. We see so many different companies working on it and trying to get this out into the marketplace, into something that we're going to be utilizing in a number of different facets. But safety is certainly a big issue. Before we get into that, though, could we get just a little bit of your backstory and maybe what the Uber Advanced Technologies Group is, and in particular with the AV side of things?
Sure. So I'm in charge of AV safety for ATG, and in that role, I have a bunch of folks that work on a couple different issues. One being standards, one being safety culture and operation safety, and the other one being product safety. A little bit about my background is I spent about 18 years in the federal government and many different roles on safety, ranging everywhere from consumer information to rulemaking to research. And so what ATG is trying to do is put a safe and responsible self-driving product on the road. To do that, obviously, we're working on our own technology. We're interfacing a lot with other OEMs because we're not building cars ourselves. And those two pieces have to go together, and the public has to trust that they're safe. So one of the things that we're working on is this notion of a safety case, and we released this about a month ago now. And really what we tried to do with that safety case is to bring together the work that we were doing, the work that was going on in industry, and to really try to put together what we would call a complete package. You know, it's not one single standard that you can use to make a vehicle safe. In fact, in this space in particular, there are multiple standards from multiple different industries that you have to pull together.
Yeah, there's so many different facets to it, to what is going to have to happen, to make this something that, like just to recap what you said too, you have to have the government involved, you have to have the public trust, which is huge, and then just creating the vehicles themselves to make sure that they operate in the right way. So from I guess that giant task that you have ahead of yourself on working with that, can we talk about some of the specific things maybe that Uber is doing, and then get into this broader aspect of working with other manufacturers and other companies?
Sure. One of the things that we feel like we're taking a leading position on is really trying to build a public narrative around all the different pieces that go into making it safe. A lot of what's going on in industry right now are what I would call single shots of issues. So people focusing on a particular issue, let's say driver training, or a particular thing about how the AI works in machine learning. What we did is said, okay, we're going to make a safety case that tries to articulate what does it mean to put a vehicle on the road in a safe and responsible manner, such that it is proficient enough to be on public roads. And so it ties all of those different pieces together in a narrative. And so where we're leading on is really trying to put all those different pieces together, along with the stuff that we've done internally.
And so making that entire package for that safety study that you're talking about, so that everybody can kind of see, how this would all work. Well, for what you're working on currently, I mean, I have some questions about that, but looking at it from that broader sense, let's have a little bit of a discussion about that. How do we create regulations for this? What are the steps that are being brought on right now? What are some of the concerns? How does that even work? And basically creating an entire new platform of technology and transportation all combined into one. There's so much that's involved in that. So what are the steps that are being taken right now to try to maybe work out some cross-platform compatibility?
Yeah, so certainly I can speak from my previous role in the government, where a lot of what the government does is looking at existing industry standards, let's say, a lot of testing vehicles on a test track and things of that nature. Really what we're talking about here is you need to do some of that and then so much more. Not all of that stuff necessarily needs to be regulated, but certainly there needs to be broad consensus industry opinion about what does it take. And we've already seen some of that. So there's a lot of focus around certain ISO standards, around certain SAE work that's going on. And really the next kind of frontier where folks are looking at are things around safety metrics. So what do you measure while you're testing on public roads that if you accumulate enough of that, then you can say I'm safe enough. And so for us, really what we said is, what is the way to put all that stuff together in a way that we ourselves are convinced that we're safe enough to be on public roads, both with emission specialists and then eventually without emission specialists. That's what we call our test drivers. And then also, what is it that is left to remain by industry? And so this is where we see a lot of work going on right now with respect to United Laboratories. We see a lot of work going on in SAE, really trying to tease apart certain aspects of that overall safety case. One of the unique things that we did was we actually made the safety case that we developed over the course of about a year and a half or so, with lots of expertise that are on my team from nuclear, from aerospace, et cetera. And we basically released that out to the industry and said, this is actually a framework that anybody can use. So what we're hoping to see happen over the next couple of weeks and months is that we get some positive feedback, more feedback from industry about, yeah, we think this makes a lot of sense. Maybe you guys missed a few things. Maybe this needs more clarification, et cetera. And that's sort of the track that we're on right now.
And so putting that out for other groups to actually take a look at what you've created. And I think that public feedback is so important, because when you think about it, there's, Uber's definitely at the forefront, and there are some other companies that are working on it as well, working on autonomous vehicles. And I feel like it would probably be a good thing to have that cross. I mean, I guess to use the word without knowing exactly what to call it, but a cross-platform compatibility, just because of the fact that you're going to want all of these cars to be able to work together, no matter what. I would think. Is that something that you're addressing, and do you speak to some of the other perhaps direct competitors to Uber about that technology?
Absolutely. So I think it's less focused on actual how you solve the problem and more for once you solve the problem, what are the key aspects of safety? So one of the things that we're obviously doing by doing this is a lot of collaboration, right? So I mentioned some of the existing voluntary industry groups that are up and running, but we ourselves are engaged in kind of individual conversations with other tech companies, with OEMs, really trying to say, look, we all have to do this in a smart and responsible way, and the public has to trust it. And so the only way we know how to do that is by sharing, right? And there's no reason that safety has to be this competitive advantage, because for any one of us, if the public doesn't trust our product, then there actually isn't a product.
Yeah.
And so for sure, we are definitely engaged in a lot of collaboration. Again, less about like whether someone's using a LiDAR or a camera, but regardless of all that, what do you need to know for perception, for example, in order to say, yeah, my perception system is robust enough that I can pull the mission specialist. One thing I should also point out, you mentioned how government is involved in all this, and certainly some of the activities that we at ATG are involved in involve some government players as well. So whether that be U.S. federal government or actually also on the international front, because again, this conversation is happening not just in the United States, but also across the globe, where different regulators are looking at this and saying, how do we actually regulate this technology that is so different from where we've been? And I think what we're trying to say at ATG is we've got what we think is a pretty smart approach. Maybe there's some things in there that could be regulated, but right now we want to get the rest of the industry to sort of coalesce around, are these the right things?
Now, where can people take a look at this? Because you said that it's out there now for people to kind of understand it a little bit more, and everybody who wants to learn more. What's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, certainly. It's on our website. We have a very neat tool, I would say, compared to many other tools from an engineering standpoint that we were actually using internally to develop this. So if you go to our website and then /ATG, you will find out like, hey, you can click on it, you can expand, you can see all the way down to some pretty nitty gritty details if that's what you want to do with your Saturday afternoon or something. But certainly there's a lot of information there that we have pulled together in order to make the safety case robust and out there for people to look at.
Well, Matt, what an exciting and challenging role to play in this, this really the start of this giant industry. And we really appreciate you joining us here on Digital Trends Live to just share some of your insight about it and talk about these things, because we're going to be seeing it more and more and more. And it's really great to just get a base of knowledge to go off of and know that somebody's out there making sure that the safety side is going to be a priority in all of this. And Nat, thank you so much for joining us here on Digital Trends Live.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and be happy to come back anytime and give you guys an update on where things stand.
Will do. We'll take you up on that. All right, that was great. So talking about autonomous vehicles, talking about one of the companies working for them. I mean, that is what we do here at Digital Trends. We get to bring you those kinds of interviews and those kinds of discussions. So much fun. But we have lots more to talk about. This is our live show. We do it live every single weekday, and we're not even halfway through yet. So we've got more coming up. What we're going to do is take a quick break, and then we have Davin Matthews in here, our photography editor, to talk about the differences between how well that cell phone cameras are working right now with a possible 108 megapixel camera coming out versus DSLR. Which one's going to take over? Are cell phone cameras actually a threat to other cameras? We'll see. We'll get his thoughts. But all that's coming up. You can drop in your thoughts, your comments, your questions on whatever platform you're watching. Back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thanks for joining us. However you're finding us, hit that subscribe button. That is so important that we get the notifications when we do go live. And right now, I am joined by Davin Matthews, our photography editor. Hello.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. And I was excited to have you on here to talk about this subject. Now, you are a photographer's photographer.
Sure.
I mean, right?
Yeah.
You mean
that's?
I don't know if that's the right way to describe that, but I'm just going to put that out there.
I like that.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the advent of what we've been seeing with cell phone cameras and what the difference is. And this is a discussion that's been going on not just here, but outside of us as well. And in particular, there was the announcement about the new Samsung chip. What is that? What
Yes.
chip was it?
So the ISOCELL Bright HMX.
Yes.
And
that's a sensor.
right. And so this is a sensor that's going to be used in phones.
Okay.
And there's two things that separate this from other phone sensors. And the one everybody's talking about is that it's 108 megapixels.
Which is huge.
It's huge. It's stupid. It's kind of. But they're using it in a smart way. So similar to other high-resolution sensors that are out there now, it actually combines 4 pixels into one, so that you get better light gathering from it that way. And then it can also it can go the other way, and you can get a full. I think it's 12,000 by 9,000 pixels out of it if you want to. But it's kind of silly to see this in a phone. But what I did notice about it that is actually neat is that it's also physically larger. So one of the key ingredients in image quality with digital cameras is the actual physical size of the sensor.
Okay.
Because that determines the total amount of light that's going to fall on that chip that you're going to capture. And of course, photography is all about light. So the more light you're capturing, the better image quality you can get. So this is actually a very large sensor. It's 1/1.33 inches, which is considerably larger than anything else that's in a phone right now. It's close to the size of a 1-inch sensor, which is a pretty common size for advanced point and shoots, like in the Sony RX100 series.
Okay.
So you are approaching that kind of technology now in a really high-end $1,300 point and shoot camera. We're now seeing phones getting up there. And actually, several years ago, Panasonic had a 1-inch sensor in a phone, the CM1. I don't think it did super well, but that was really interesting to see. So the question this raises, though, is when you have a larger sensor, you also need a larger lens to be able to cover it. And that might make things like having multiple camera modules in a phone, which we're seeing more and more of those today.
Right.
It might make doing that harder. So there are going to be some trade-offs there to using that larger sensor.
So, I mean, with that, 108 megapixel, I guess if it's taking 4 and putting it into 1, so you could...
Right, so it gets about
like
27 megapixels doing it that way.
So 27 megapixels, which is still
Which is
huge.
still, I mean, it's a lot for a phone.
Yeah.
It's certainly kind of more than I think most people need.
Yeah.
And you always have to wonder, like, is this technology for the sake of making things better, or is it just to hit some sort of marketing?
Just to say,
goal?
oh, look at this,
hey,
we got 100.
we're the first to 100 megapixels in a phone,
Well, let's talk about that, and that's why I wanted to I prefaced that at the beginning. You're a photographer because you do this professionally. Like, at what point would this be something you would consider on a professional side to utilize a phone like this?
I mean, I think that from one perspective, professionals have been using phones for a long time now, and I think there's this idea that there is a right tool for the job, and sometimes a phone is the right tool for the job, and I think that there are a lot of people who enjoy challenging themselves by working with a lower end device, whether it's a phone or a cheap camera or not, to try to spur that creativity. So I don't think that. I mean, I don't want to get into a position where I'm saying like the gear makes the photographer at any point, right? So I think that these phones are very good, but I do think at one level, you're not ever going to see a phone catch up to a high-end camera, even if the image quality gets there, just because the device itself isn't set up to be used in the same way. And for professionals, it's the ergonomics, it's the amount of control you have, the ability to quickly make adjustments on the fly. All that kind of stuff comes into play. But phones are getting really, really good. I think more than megapixels, what's going to take them to the next level will be computational photography. So it's all the stuff we're seeing with portrait modes and all these multiple lenses and camera modules being combined to do cool effects. HDR, really good night modes that combine multiple frames into one to get low noise images in dark situations. I think we're seeing a lot of really cool stuff there. A lot of technology that actually camera manufacturers could take to make their cameras better too. So we're seeing phones progressing at a much faster rate than cameras are. But yeah, as far as professionals are concerned, there's a lot more to it than just the image quality.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you'll ever actually get a true 100 megapixels out of a sensor that's small. There's some other physical limitations. Phenomenon called diffraction comes into play that kind of limits what resolution you can get. So I do think saying 108 megapixels is kind of it's a marketing thing more than anything. But it's very impressive tech. You have to think about how small those pixels are. Everyone has a lens over it, a micro lens. Everyone has a photodiode behind it and a color filter. I mean, how do they make things this small? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That is incredibly small. Yeah, to pack 108 in something like that.
It's very impressive. So.
Well, but the bottom line is DSLRs are still going to have their...
Yeah, you're still going to have DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. And at the end of the day, there's pickup trucks and there's sports cars, and it doesn't matter if you make a pickup truck that goes as fast as a sports car, or there are different tools for different jobs. So
that makes sense. That was a very diplomatic way to say that. But true. Well, David, thank you for hopping out here to talk about that, because you are the expert. That's why I wanted to find out from you what your thoughts were on that. And we have lots of coverage at digitaltrends.com about that, and lots of articles about photography in general. And we have more coming up here on the show today. So we've got some more news in about 12 minutes or so. I'm going to bring you updated on a few different things. But before that, we have Nir Eyal, best-selling author of Hooked and Indistractable, talking about, are we too distracted? Are we? And what are the tools? What are causing that? Or maybe there's a different way to look at it. It's really interesting. We're really excited to have that conversation with him. All that and more while we're broadcasting live. So drop in your comments, your questions, and we'll be back in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler, broadcasting live here every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you tech headlines, news, interviews, and discussions. And one of the things we talk a lot about here is technology too distracting? It's certainly a subject we brought up on this show. I know I've dealt with it in my own life. We probably all dealt with it in some aspect of, you're always on your phone or you're always on your computer. And is that good or bad for you? Well, there's a lot bigger conversation to be had about that. And we certainly have somebody who's an expert joining us right now. We have Nir Eyal, author of Hooked and Indistractable, joining us right now. Hello, thanks for being here on the show.
My pleasure, Greg. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And it's something I ask myself all the time, or I have somebody calling it out like, okay, get off your phone, pay attention to what's around you. But let's get kind of a background of a little bit of your background and maybe what led you to write this book.
Sure. So 5 years ago, I wrote a book called Hooked, which did much better than anybody expected, including myself. We've just passed 250,000 copies of the book, and it's a primer on how to build habit-forming products for good, how to use the same secrets that Facebook and Google and the gaming companies use to keep users coming back, to also help people do good things, right? Like exercise habits or eating habits or saving money habits. All of these same habits can be influenced by using these very same techniques for good. But of course, there's also a downside. And that downside is that many times we overuse these products and services. You know, when I started teaching at Stanford and later when I published this book, Hooked, I had to convince people about how you could use consumer psychology to influence users' behavior. Well, today, everybody knows this is happening. And in some ways, I actually think that the pendulum has swung too far. Now we've become scared about these tools. We hear people saying that they're hijacking our brains, that they're addictive. And so in many ways, I wanted to kind of give a more rational scientific approach to how do we get the best out of these tools without letting them get the best of us.
I think you're absolutely right. That is certainly a kind of a prevalent feeling now of you see everybody like, well, I'm leaving these services, I'm getting off of this, I'm going to try to do that and do that reactionary approach. But finding a balance in the middle, I think, for a lot of us is difficult to understand where that balance should be and what we should be looking at. And maybe you can give us some advice on that aspect.
Absolutely. So the idea here is to really define distraction. So the definition of distraction is best understood by understanding what distraction is not. The opposite of distraction is not focus. The opposite of distraction is traction. Traction and distraction both end in the same 5 letters, ACTION, which spells action, reminding us that both traction and distraction, these are things that we do, not things that happen to us. They both also come from the same Latin root, trahare, which means to pull. So traction is anything you do with intent that pulls you towards what you want to do in life. The opposite of traction is distraction. So this is really important to recognize for a few reasons. One, it stops us from this silly moral hierarchy of, oh, you like to use Facebook and play video games. That's somehow inferior to me because I just like to watch football, and that's somehow a more morally superior pastime. That's ridiculous. They're both pastimes. There's nothing wrong with either of them. They're not melting your brain. It's just about how you intend to spend your time. And if you want to spend your time watching YouTube videos or playing video games, great, do it. But do it on your schedule, not on the app maker's schedule. Second, we want to stop tricking ourselves to think that the things that we think are helpful, one of the biggest culprits is email in the workplace, right? People call, silly meetings or send emails that don't need to be sent. That is just as much of a distraction as playing video games. If it's something that you don't do without intent, something that you're doing that is the opposite of what you plan to do with your time, the opposite of traction is always distraction. So we have to start by defining those differences.
That is a very interesting take on it, to try to figure that out, to find, I guess, that middle ground or what works for you on a personal level. I know one thing that you, and just taking a look, what we were talking about before the show, is the word addiction. That gets thrown around a lot when it comes to technological devices or platforms. How do you feel about that term being used?
Yeah, that term drives me crazy. It makes my skin crawl because an addiction is a pathology. Now, some people do get addicted to various things, right? But not everyone who uses a product gets addicted to it, right? We can responsibly use alcohol without all becoming alcoholics. We have sex. We don't all become sex addicts. Not everybody who eats food is a food addict. So the majority of people who interact with these products use them in a way that is not necessarily an addiction. Now, some people really do get addicted, but you realize what's interesting about why people love to use this term, people who love to sell you something like a treatment center or a new program or a new book, typically, what they're doing when they use this term addiction is giving you an excuse from having to take responsibility. And we want that, right? People love the idea of, oh, if it's an addiction, well, that must have a dealer and a pusher. And now it's mind control doing it to you. Whereas if we call it what it really is, overuse, right? How much less pointed is that term of overuse versus addiction? Now, some people really are addicted and they do need special assistance. And I think companies have a special ethical obligation to help them. But this idea that we're somehow all addicted, that it's hijacking our brain, not only is it scientifically basis, it's actually hurtful. Because when we tell people, that technology is addictive and it's hijacking their brain, they believe it. This is called learned helplessness. And what people do when they believe that, oh my gosh, I guess there's nothing I can do, these algorithms are taking over my brain, they stop trying. They make excuses for themselves and their kids for behaviors that we can otherwise do something about if we know how.
So looking at it from that aspect, and again, we're talking to Nir, who's author of Indistractable, and we're going to talk about the book too, because I want to make sure everybody knows where they can go get it. When we're looking at this from an individual standpoint, so somebody's watching right now, and clearly they'll be able to find out more from the book, but what's maybe one piece of advice that you could give them on how to figure out how to manage that on their own?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's more important than just the tactics, right? Some quick hacky idea or some, we want these easy solutions. But the fact is that there's an icky, sticky truth here that we have to understand. That in my 5 years of research, writing Indistractable, the number one lesson I took away was that distraction starts from within. It's called an internal trigger. An internal trigger is some kind of uncomfortable emotional state that in fact drives all of our behavior. Even the pursuit of something pleasurable is in fact spurred by desire, craving, wanting. And so what that means is if all behavior is spurred by a desire to escape discomfort, that means that time management is pain management. That if we really want to make sure that we do what we say we're going to do without getting distracted, the first step has to be to understand why are we escaping reality with these various devices. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with them, right? If we're using them in the way that we want to. But if we find ourselves getting distracted, using them for distraction as opposed to traction, then we need to start asking ourselves why. And then, of course, the first step is to learn techniques to master those internal triggers. Now, a lot of people say, okay, go meditate or do one of those techniques. I kind of steer away from that. Not that these techniques don't work, right? Meditation is wonderful if it works for you, but there's a lot of other techniques that we can use as well to make sure that we are dealing with and can master these internal triggers so that we can control them as opposed to letting them control us.
Well, it's a fascinating subject, and clearly you are an expert. I mean, with Hooked and the success of that, and now Indistractable. And I want everybody to know where they can go get the book, where you would want them to head to get this and find out more information.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the audiobook is available right now on Audible or on Amazon. You can get that immediately. The print edition comes out September 10th. And if you pre-order and go to indistractable.com, I will send you the entire PDF of the book several weeks here before it hits bookstore shelves at indistractable.com.
Are you voicing your own audiobook?
I am. Yeah, I did.
Good. I was going to say, you got the perfect voice for it, so it would make sense. Well, Nir, y'all, thank you so much for joining us. Really fascinating subject. I can't wait to get the book, and really appreciate you joining us here on Digital Trends Live to talk about this.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Greg.
All right, fascinating, right? That's something that we all deal with, and that I think redefining that and thinking about it in a different way is really, really important. That was a really interesting way to look at about, distraction, attraction, how that all works out. Let's do this, though. We're going to take a break. So we have more coming up. We have lots here on Digital Trends Live. We're going to be talking about rockets in about 10 minutes. But before we do that, we'll have some news for you. And what we're going to do is take a quick break. And we'll be back with more Digital Trends Live. And welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thank you very much for joining us. Hit that subscribe button. Drop in your comments on whatever platform you're watching on and let us know what you want to talk about. Or if you have something to say about what we're bringing up, feel free to do that. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we'll have Othniel Mwamalu from Advanced Rockets to talk to us about rockets and everything that they're doing. Really exciting topic. But before we get there, let's talk about some other news. So here's a trending story that's at Digital Trends right now, and it has to do with a group of researchers from Harvard and some other universities coming up with an exoskeleton. Now, we've seen exoskeletons utilized by a number of different companies are trying to work on this, ways that you can help out, particularly in manufacturing. You see it a lot, or if you're an alien and you want to explore another world, that's another typical thing that people think of when they hear exosuit, or exoskeleton. This is one, though, that is to help out a much more an issue that affects a lot more people. And I'm talking about just mobility, walking around, running, jogging. And this in particular is it's a robot hip. It's a robotic hip is what they've come up with. So this comes from Harvard's Weiss Institute for Biologically Inspired Engineering. That is a name right there. And what it's designed to do is exactly that. It's to take some of the pressure off from walking. We know so many people, maybe somebody watching right now has issues with, say, a knee or a leg or your hip, and it makes it difficult to get around. That can really, really take the toll on you. That can make life not as much fun. And this is how they're working on doing this. So far, it's been used on treadmill-based tests. On average, it's reduced metabolic costs of walking by 9.3% and of running by 4%. So to explain that, it's the amount of energy it takes to lift your leg up, put your leg down. That takes a toll on you. The way this works is it's straps around your hip. It's got a series of the robotics are there on the back, and then you also strap it around your legs. And so when you lift your leg up and down, it takes some of the tension off of that. It helps pull up, it helps pull down. The software side of it is so advanced that it's able to tell the difference between when you're walking or when you're running. So it can change the amount that it helps you out. Now, this is still in the prototype stage. This isn't something that's going to be out there yet. But if we can get something like this for just ordinary use, ordinary walking around, think of how many people that's going to help out just with mobility issues. I mean, how many people have a bum knee? I know a lot of people do. And this is something that the more that they work on this, could really help improve some lives. Right now, it only weighs 11 pounds as well. So the shorts are kind of part of it as you wear these. But yeah, it only weighs 11 pounds, which means that that's not that much. It's not some giant heavy pack you have to put on that's going to, that you have to walk around with. And right now it looks a little big. Clearly that's not something you're most likely going to want to wear around all the time. But if we can get that even scaled down some, or if somebody really does have major issues, that is a pretty incredible achievement. Again, that's coming from Harvard with their researchers also working in conjunction with a number of different universities. But something they've come up with, and they just released that video showcasing it. Let us know what you think about that in the comments. And that is, I think it's a pretty cool use of robotics, pretty cool use of an exosuit or an exoskeleton to help improve lives. All right, let's continue on and talk about a couple other things before we get into talking about some rockets and space travel. This is another thing that's being utilized to help people's lives. And I'm talking about health tech. We see this as such an emerging industry that we're seeing more and more technology and apps being utilized to help people out in the health side of things. And this is yet another one of these. And again, it comes from researchers. This is a group of researchers from the University of Toronto. And what they've developed is software that can essentially do a full fitness checkup from an app in 30 seconds. That sounds incredible, right? Here's how that works. So it's called Anura, and this app is able to do a number of different things based on scanning your face. That doesn't seem like it would be possible, right? But we're taking a look here now at how some of the technology works. So they're saying you would be able to figure out what your risk of cardiovascular disease is and a number of different things, blood pressure, all of that by doing these scans where it can actually scan through your skin. Your skin is technically see-through. This software can see through it. As we can see right there, taking a look at this image. So cardiovascular disease risk, they're saying you can get an overall health score. You can get blood pressure, heart rate, stress index. It can tell if you're stressed. And we've seen that kind of software being utilized in a number of different ways too. Amazon with their facial recognition software can tell that. But this is through all of this hours and hours and hours and hours of testing and scanning. That's what some of this information can be used for. So this, they utilize, and I'm taking a look here just right now to make sure that I get this right. This article is at digitaltrends.com as well. So they use optical sensors in your phone to image hemoglobin changes under the skin. So they're taking a look at the hemoglobin under your skin, and that's what they're able to do in order to do this. So it uses, let's say they talking about, where like the iPhone uses Face ID to use bounced infrared beams to ascertain the surface of geometry of our faces. This goes a little bit deeper. This is an app right now that they're working on at the University of Toronto, and this kind of technology could be huge. I mean, think of how many people don't have healthcare, and that's a whole other issue that we could get into. But if we could solve at least some of that to where someone could be aware of some issues that they have just through an app, I think a lot of people would utilize that, especially if it's just a free app you download, even if it's not 100% accurate. And I'm not saying anything about their research or test, but say it's even just partially accurate to where it says, hey, you should probably get this checked out. That is a great advancement in technology. That is a great use of health tech. It's a great use of an app and something that can really, really help out a lot of people. A lot more people have smartphones than they do health insurance. So at least this would be some kind of step in the right direction to help rectify some of that until we can solve the rest of it. But that is a really cool use of it. You can read more about that at digitaltrends.com. All right, one final trending story today that I want to get to has to do with Virgin Galactic. We're talking about space travel. We're talking about all of these different companies that are working on this, and really, really what an exciting time we live in for the future of space travel in all kinds of aspects. But this is Virgin Galactic releasing their video about opening the doors to the Gateway to Space spaceport. So this is in New Mexico. It's in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And that is where they're actually building their whole facilities. So taking a look right there, so that's one of their planes. This is how Virgin Galactic wants to get people to space. They're flying that thing up. There will be a ship attached to that will then launch into space. So they'll get up in a very high altitude orbit, and then they will launch from there and be able to get up into space. So it's really a cool prospect. So the Spaceport America is their giant facility there in New Mexico. And this is the place where they're opening up. What we're going to showcase is the inside of how this is going to work. So this is the spaceport. This is what they want to show, the Gateway to Space spaceport. And there's a few different things on it. They want to make sure that it's a comfortable space. So this would ideally be where people would show up before they travel off. They would hang out here. And they said with the rocket engineers, with the spaceship pilots, and they would hang out just in this area. Then you would have a mission control behind that, all part of this one facility, all located at the Virgin Galactic Spaceport. They nicknamed the first floor Gaia, since it's supposed to be focused on the home planet. And then the other side of it is focused more on the space side of it, is named Cirrus, which is the second floor. This is very Richard Branson-y that we have with this thing. But still, it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting when you really think about it and what it could do. So that's what we're looking at right now. This is the Virgin Galactic spaceport. So Gateway to Space, that is their spaceport, and that is what we're looking at right now. So you can find out more about that at digitaltrends.com. I know we do have a guest coming up. I'm not sure if we want to take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break. And then we're going to come back. So we're going to talk about some more space flight, some more interesting aspects of that. And somebody who's really at the forefront of that. We're going to have Othniel Mwamalu, who is the founder and CEO of Advanced Rockets Corporation, to talk about their role in this exciting new field, where it's going, and what they're doing with their rockets. All that while broadcasting live. Back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. This is Digital Trends Live, and we are broadcasting live, and so that means we can take your comments and questions as we go through the show. So please drop those in there. Let us know what you want to talk about. It's so much fun to do this in an interactive way, to where we can really, learn together and find out a lot about technology together. And certainly something that is at the forefront of what we talk about a lot is this advent of a new commercial space tourism industry that we're seeing, a new interest in space. It's very, very exciting, and interest in rockets and how all of it is working out, and it's really, really cool. And we get to talk to right now Othniel Mbamalu, who is the founder and CEO of Advanced Rockets Corporation, about that and so much more. Othniel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get, I want to talk about the industry as a whole and where you see it going and what Advanced Rockets' role is in that. But before that, can we get a little bit of your background and how you got into this?
Sure, absolutely. So thanks for having me. This would be my first major media appearance, and I'm happy to be doing with Digital Trends. So a little background would be I've always had an interest in space flight, and always wanted to. So I was born in Africa and I grew up in Africa, and so one of the things, the space flight obviously always fascinated me. And one of the things that I learned very early on was that it was expensive to do anything, to go to space. And so from a very early age, I started trying to figure out how to make space flight affordable. So it's always been an interest of mine growing up, and I do have a background in mechanical engineering. And I moved to the United States a few years back and started Advanced Rockets, and we've been working on making spaceflight more affordable and accessible. We do have U.S. patents to back up some of the work we've been doing, and so it's been a very exciting time for us here at Advanced Rockets.
Well, that's a really interesting backstory too, of just how you got into this. But now that you're here, let's talk about the industry as a whole. With Advanced Rockets and what you're doing in particular, and how important the reusability of rockets are in this new industry.
So one of the key words they used in with spaceflight, especially with the work that SpaceX is doing and Blue Origin are doing, is reusability. But one of the things that is often overlooked is, which is not always mentioned, is a little factor known as continuous intact abort capability. And so alongside reusability, it is one of the most critical aspects if you were looking to reduce the cost of access to space. One of the reasons why space flight is not as affordable as we would want for it to be is because, you have armies of engineers who are needed to support operations, and what that leads to is very high overheads. And so space flight doesn't necessarily have to be expensive, but it is because of some of these other factors, many of which is engineering. I mean, there's other factors, economic and political, but we've focused our attention, our research work on issues, problems with reusability, and also mostly with continuous intact abort capability. It allows for us to operate our rockets like they were commercial airliners, and gives us performance that almost any other system would not be able to. Intrinsic to most of the other designs that we're going to be competing with are reasons why they will not be able to operate as efficiently and as cost effectively as our systems. And so some of the problems we've been able to solve in reusability and in continuous abort capability enables us to do this.
So that's a lot to factor in when you're trying to think about how we're going to actually be, utilizing this technology. And there are so many different applications. Can we walk through some of those, maybe in particular of what you're working on and some of the partnerships maybe that you're working on?
Sure, absolutely. So a great analogy really is the outbacks of Australia and some of the least accessible places on Earth. And if you have a means to, if you had gold in great reserves in places like that, and you had a means to access those locations, and it's no longer a problem, and it becomes reasonable for you to want to do that. And so as far as applications go with spaceflight, The applications are numerous. There's so many things we could do. Space is rich in wealth, in potential for space tourism, in potential for mining operations, but we cannot do any of all the different things that we might be able to do because of the cost. And so what we are trying to do is enable low-cost access and open up an industry for everything that might be possible. All the other different industries that we might not be able to dream of right now. I mean, think about the internet and all the other things that its original creators did not think of when they were working on it or when they envisioned it. And so there's so many possibilities. We are going to create an enabling environment and systems to allow this industries. You're looking at space-based solar power stations. You're looking at space tourism. You're looking at mining helium-3 on the moon and for potential nuclear fusion applications. And then space exploration and colonies of Mars potentially. And so there's so many things that we would be able to do, and the potentials are just endless.
That's so great. That's a really great analogy, Chu. Just thinking about the internet, who knew what that would turn into, when that was first being developed. And we don't know everything. And that's why it's so exciting to me of being at the forefront, at the start of this whole new revolution when it comes to the space industry. But I want to talk about your rockets in particular, not only just for the space side of things, but talking about hypersonic travel, Earth-side travel. Do you think that's something that your rockets could be utilized for?
Sure. So one of the most interesting aspects of what it is we're working on is the potential application for point-to-point transportation. And so flying from New York to Paris might be an 8-hour, 9-hour flight. And so you want to be able to reduce the time spent in transit. And the Concorde tried to do this and failed. It was sort of spectacular, if you like. Well, maybe not spectacular, but it did fail. And part of the reason for that is the operational cost and the demand for the Concorde was, not where the industry wanted for it to be. One of the things that we would be able to do is there's been a renewed interest in hypersonic or high-speed civil transportation systems, and so that's a good thing for the industry. But also the technology has matured to a place where we could actually deploy some of the systems and do it economically or do it competitively relative to some of the more standard systems that we have today. So that's definitely one of the things that we're looking to, one of the applications that we're looking to pursue. Our primary focus, obviously, is the space flight and being able to launch payload and manned flights to space, but very key area of interest definitely is point-to-point transportation.
How far out do you think we are for regular commercial space tourism?
It's really difficult, especially with spaceflight, to put specific dates on some of these things. I might be a little bit more optimistic than most people because that's what I live on in the sense that I want to see the industry grow fast and things happen quickly. I would give a rough estimate and say in 5 to 10 years, potentially, we would have routine space tourism industry that launch systems that meet those services. The space station, I think NASA just gave a mandate that allows for the space station to be commercialized in the sense that it would allow for private tourists to visit. I mean, they've been doing that to a certain extent, but I think they're looking to expand that program. And so that's the start of what could potentially be a multi-billion-dollar a year industry, tourism to low Earth orbit and potentially even to the moon. I see a spiritual connection for most people being able to do that. And so up to this point, it's been scientific in nature and research based, but there's a very big potential for people wanting to connect with all of Earth and what the spiritual experience of that might be, and being able to go to space offers them an opportunity to do that.
Will you be going up yourself?
I've always wanted to go to space. My interest was actually in space flight was actually sparked by my desire to go to space. And if you go out in the deserts here in California or somewhere where you do not have as much light pollution, I mean, the stars are beautiful and you could see them in all of beauty. And so that's one of the things that inspired me. I always wanted to know everything about the heavens and the stars. And so I always wanted to go to space. I most definitely will be. It's a dream of mine, and I think I will be doing that in my lifetime.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for joining us here on Digital Trends Live to talk about this. It's really, it's a pleasure to talk about somebody at the forefront of this brand new industry and seeing where it's going to go. It's very, very exciting of all the developments that are happening so fast with it. And for anybody out there who wants to know more about your company in particular, what's the best place for them to go?
So we do have a website, airbreathing.space, and it does have sufficient information, and you can reach out to us. We do have a phone number and email links and all of that sort. And so we are open to industry partnerships and to talking to partners of all kinds at this stage. And we're excited for what it is that our technologies would be able to do for spaceflight.
Well, Neil, thank you for being here on Digital Trends Live. Thanks for this being your first media outlet interview. Appreciate it. Fantastic job, and we'll definitely have to have you back on soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, there we go. Talking about somebody at the forefront of the space industry and space tourism and where that's all going to go with Advanced Rockets Corporation. We've covered a lot of technology here today, like we usually do. We had Luke Larson here at the beginning of the show talking about what's going on with Gamescom and everything that's happening, or Gamescom. There we go. That's a proper way to say it. Gamescom 2019. We've got all the coverage at digitaltrends.com for what's happening there with all the announcements from the different gaming platforms. Also on the show today, we had Nat Bius, head of AV safety for Uber Advanced Technologies Group. We had Davin Matthews talking about the advent of these really high megapixel phone cameras. We had Nir Eyal, best-selling author of Hooked and Indistractable. Both of those books. Check out those books. Get the audiobook for Indistractable right now. And Othniel Mwabalu, who from Advanced Rockets Corporation, the founder and CEO of them. And that's all just in one day of show. And of course, lots of news and headlines and interviews that we have here every single day. We do appreciate everybody who joins us. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with more Digital Trends Live.